ideas from appearing. Where do we see a couple of revolutions in the decades? There's one in Italy in 1820.
In Spain.
And in Spain. Okay, and part of it is Spain is trying to reassert control over its colonies in the New World. And they're calling up troops, they're sending them over. There is pressure in both of these places for more liberal government. The revolutions in Spain and Italy are both inspired by liberalism, and what else will be in play in Italy? Nationalism, because what is the other part of the agenda for the Italians? To try to unify. Okay? So the peace settlement is opposed to the ideas associated with the French Revolution. It doesn't mean they've gone away. Clay.
What year was Spain's?
Both revolutions occur in 1820. And what is the response from the European powers? Max?
First, the Austrians go and restore the Italian power, or the power in Naples, and then France restores the Spanish power.
Okay, good. They call a Congress. The decision is made to authorize Austrian intervention to put down the revolts in Italy, and Austria does in 1821. There is also discussion of how to put down the revolts in Spain, and that takes longer. The revolution there will not be suppressed until 1823. And what is kind of surprising about, well, actually, who eventually is authorized to put down the revolution in Spain? Okay, what is surprising and what should surprise us there? Okay, the whole Congress system is really designed to keep France from intervening. How does France rehabilitate itself and get itself back into being one of the great powers and in play diplomatically?
Just a quick question, is France part of the Congress system, or is it not allowed to?
It will become part of it, which is very interesting since the peace arrangement was sort of aimed to limit France. How does France resurrect itself?
By doing this, by doing the Spain?
It will be a demonstration that France is a responsible member, yes. But it gets back into play earlier than that. And that comes back to the Congress of Vienna in 1815. Just a quick reminder, we do have the hemming in of France, the creation of the Netherlands, the presence of a larger Corsica or state of Sardinia, Kingdom of Sardinia. You have an Austrian presence backing up Sardinia in Italy. You have Prussia as the sentinel on the Rhine, the Atlantic, and the Pyrenees. Those are designed to control France. The difficulty that occurs, the biggest problem at the Congress of Vienna is rewarding the winners. Austria is rewarded with substantial territory in Italy and along the Illyrian coast, giving them access to the sea. They're fairly happy with that. They've given up the Netherlands, which was really more of a headache. They're very satisfied with that. Britain has seized a lot of overseas territories during the Napoleonic Wars. One of the most important ones is in South Africa. They take over the Dutch colony there because the Netherlands had joined with France. And so Britain is going to hold this. Why is South Africa such a strategic location? Okay, it's the best way station on the route to India and to the Far East. The Dutch had possessed it. They had taken it from the Portuguese. The British now take it. They're going to hold on to it. They've also picked up a few other islands. So Britain, and again, does Britain need any land on the continent? No, not interested. So Britain is satisfied. Austria is pleased with it. The problem comes with Prussia and Russia. Russia wants to take much of Poland and dominate a new kingdom of Poland. Prussia is willing to give up some of the territory that they got in the Polish partitions if they can get all of the kingdom of Saxony, which was fairly sizable and would expand there. Austria and Britain were concerned that if the Prussia and Russia did that, it would destabilize the balance of power in Central Europe. And so a split develops at the Congress of Vienna between Britain and Austria and Prussia and Russia. And it actually looks like they may go to war over who will take what territories, how they will be rewarded. What forestalls this possible war? Yes, and it's actually related. Napoleon hears of these disputes, recognizes that the Allies are sort of not as united as they were, and so he arranges his escape from Elba. Elba is this little island here. He's given a stipend, he's living there. It's constantly patrolled by British warships. He finds a way to sneak off the island, land. He marches back to France, and we have the famous 100 Days. This renewed threat of Napoleon kind of brings the Allies to their senses. They unite and defeat Napoleon at Waterloo, and they resolve their disputes peacefully, with Russia getting a slightly smaller Polish kingdom and Prussia getting part of Saxony, but not all of it. However, prior to that time, as Austria and Britain had faced the threat of Russia and Prussia, can Austria as a land power fight Prussia and Russia if it were to come to war? Okay? And so it's in that crisis, just before Napoleon returns, that the French foreign minister, whose name is Talleyrand, and I probably should put that up here. Talleyrand uses that crisis to make France a player again. And so Britain and Austria sign a treaty with France to fight against Austria and Russia if it comes to that. Obviously the war doesn't come, Napoleon returns, but Talleyrand is able to make France a player again in the diplomatic chessboard of Europe. Following the defeat of Napoleon and the return of Louis XVIII with his monarchy, France now is working hard to prove that it will be a responsible member of the concert of Europe, that it can be trusted. And so in the debate over what to do with Spain, there's hesitation to use France. France is eventually chosen because the only other country that volunteered to put down the Spanish revolt was Russia. Alexander volunteered 100,000 Cossacks to ride across Europe and teach the Spanish a lesson they would never forget. Can you understand why that option was not chosen? Would you want 100,000 Cossacks riding through your land to get to Spain?
Did Russia not have any sort of navy at all?
It was not, yeah, that was not,
Couldn't transport.
seen as not, yeah, British Navy was not about to try to take them, and horses don't travel so well on land. And so they said, thanks, Alexander, but no thanks, and the decision was made to use France. And so France puts that down. So we see this international intervention occurring successfully in these fairly central parts of Europe. There are going to be some successful revolts in the more peripheral areas that the conservative powers are unable to put down, in part because all of the great powers are unwilling to do so. One of those is in Latin America. The Latin American colonies of both Spain and Portugal will rebel. They were essentially ruling themselves throughout the Napoleonic era. They have the example of the United States to its north and its successful rebellion. When the Spanish and the Portuguese try to reimpose centralized political control and renewed economic mercantilist control, there is a movement for liberation, for independence in Latin America. In part because they've gotten used to trading with Britain and appreciate those inexpensive things. The United States is supportive of these revolutions, and in fact this is where in 1820 you get the